We have a new class beginning very soon. It's coming up this September, and it's going to be a little different than usual. This will be a 10-week class from September 5th through November 7th. It will take place on Thursday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so 2 hours every Thursday night. And this is specifically for those who have never worked with Milton before, a really solid introductory class. And just also a good way to set your tone for the year. Of course, fall is when the business gets rolling again. Auditions pick up in a major way. If you are interested and you would like to register, email me at questionsformilton@gmail.com. I know that may seem very old school to have to email me, but this is the way that we do it. So again, if you're interested in signing up, registering for the class, email me questionsformilton@gmail.com. Welcome to I Don't Need an Acting Class with Milton Justice.
So I was making a list. I just was sitting down to make a list of things that could possibly hit you. The title, the author, the time frame where it takes place, the locale, the plot, the exchange between characters, the class of the character's relationship to things, maybe the dialect. But I mean, any of these things are things that you can wander around with. Don't feel an obligation to perform. The name of the play that we're working on is called The Rainmaker. And if I'm wandering around with that, I think to myself, what is a rainmaker? Somebody who makes rain? How absurd is that? I mean, somebody who makes rain? I mean, come on, that sounds like something movie people do. It's like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all.
I go to like tribal stuff.
Ooh, yeah. That somebody walks in and says, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" I'm a rainmaker. It's like already. It's like it is so far out of bounds of something that makes any sense at all that I say, okay, I'm in that world. I'm in the world of some kind of character who says he's a rainmaker. The time frame of this particular play is during the Depression, but it's in farmland. Okay, so I think to myself, what do I know about farmland? I once drove across the country with my friend Mark Donnelly. But I drove across the country from Los Angeles to New York because Lee Grant's husband had a Mercedes. And he said, oh, just get rid of it. And he said, I don't care. Just take it to the mobile station on Pacific Coast Highway and just see if they can get some money for it. And I said, well, if you'll let me drive it anytime I want, I'll drive the car to New York for you. And he said, really? And I said, yes, you also have to pay to garage it. So at any rate, so now we drive across the country. And at first, my thought was, oh my God, there they are, the amber waves of grain. This is amazing. Look at that. And it went on and on and on and on. So here's what hits me. I think life in that particular realm is boring. It is methodical. It is structured. I have a note to myself that says, make a list of 20 things, again, arbitrary numbers, that you use on a farm that are specific to a farm that I have no relationship to.
And you were able to come up with that list?
No, I had to work at it.
Yeah, it also depends on what year, too.
Yeah, so this is the 1930s. It's farm life in the 1930s, and there's a drought. Now that's as you know, this is the fun part for me. I love research, and I love visual images. That's drought, and that's farmland. I mean, think about it. It's like this is the lay of the land of this play. It helps me if I have a visual image, and there are lots of, we're lucky, there's a lot on YouTube, there's a lot of documentaries about this particular place in Middle America. Everything about Middle America I find uninteresting. It's just there's something about it, the word Middle America. But now, as I'm talking out, I said, but there's this character that is the Rainmaker. And so now I'm beginning a little bit to get this idea of a rainmaker in the middle of Middle America and a drought. And again, I'm not getting all the answers to this, but what I am getting is I'm beginning to get a like an idea of what world I'm in. A play is an invented world. This is I did find this interesting from this Robert McKee book on character. Robert McKee he does still. He gives these symposiums on story structure for filmmakers, and so I went, and it's a weekend, and I went in LA, and everybody was there. Barry Manilow was there with his secretary who was taking notes. I mean, and everybody took this class. And I think we paid $300, and this was a long time ago for the weekend. A lot of people are making good money. I'm not one of them. Anyway, okay. But here is his note in this book. Characters are not human beings. That's an interesting thing since we talk about how they're humans. But what he's saying is a character is no more human than the Venus de Milo, Whistler's mother, and Sweet Georgia Brown are women. A character is a work of art, an emotive, meaningful, memorable metaphor for humanity, born in the mind womb of an author, held safe in the arms of story, destined to live forever. Now, it's slightly pretentious, but it reminded me that this world that exists is the playwright's world. And this is the reason that writing is not conversation. This is the reason that acting is not just talking, unless you're Denzel Washington. I cannot believe he and Jake Gyllenhaal are doing Othello on Broadway. But the thing about it is, it is important to realize this is all selected. It is the playwright's world for a reason. The playwright has chosen this world because this world helps, in this case, him, say what he needs to say, what he is looking for to say. So, I think it's a really good reminder. It reminds me that it's heightened. And there are elements that are important. It's really important for me to understand that the nature of a play is conflict. As I look at the scene between Starbuck and Lizzie, I know there's conflict. If I didn't know it, I certainly know it right away, but it shortcuts it for me. It's almost like when I know what the play is, I can say to myself, and what's wrong with this picture? It's just something to continue to remember. That's important. Another note that I had that was totally arbitrary is that every play is a continuation of the past, and I mentioned it before. But it's like it tells me that I need to know what world exists and what is going on with these people before they get here. A big note for me is just always, I don't do it anymore, but I'm just aware of it. The tendency for cliches or prejudices. It's always it's always an issue. If he's a farmer, I have the city boys concept of farmers. And they all seem to have Texas accents. I've always found it's very difficult to sound intelligent with a Texas accent. I hate to say that, but I had a teacher in college who, God, she was so brilliant. I couldn't believe it. And when she was quoting things and speaking French or reading Elizabethan dialogue, she sounded so good. But when she spoke English, it was like she had the thickest Texas accent. It was very difficult. Anyway. All right, so if you go slowly, you will find things, and these impressions will lead you to an understanding. I'm taking in things. I'm kind of like letting them wander into my consciousness. It takes place in an old barn. I say, well, I'm going to design my barn later. I resist making a decision as long as possible. And the reason is I want every decision I make to feed into my understanding of what the scene's about. So I don't just have a barn. I have a barn in a play called The Rainmaker in a scene with somebody called Lizzie. I set everything up to help feed me. I mean, I know what it's about, so I'm setting stuff up to feed me. It helps me because then I am not in the set designer set, I'm in my set. And the way I talk it out is my relationship to it. And my relationship to it helps feed the play. Because I know what the play is about. At this particular point, I just know it takes place at a barn. I don't know if it's a well-kept barn. I don't know if it's an old barn. All I know is it's in the middle of it. It's in a drought. And so I don't know. I mean, first of all, I'm doing a play. So I'm not going to have a lot of set anyway. So I can visualize what I need. So, I mean, that's the reason I say I don't know enough to know exactly what the barn looks like at this particular point. But I also, it's a really good question because I know that once I know more, that it's going to help my Starbuck. Because if this barn is meticulous and well kept up, then I know the kind of people I'm dealing with. If the barn is falling apart, I know something different. And because I know the kind of people that I'm dealing with, then I know how I live off them. As soon as this is a very well manicured barn, and I know from the plot I'm here to sell people in the middle of a drought, that I'm going to bring them rain, then I now I know how I have to approach them based on the barn that I'm in. Now, the thing about it is, when I was location scouting outside of Toronto for a film like in the early 80s with Lee Grant, and so we were location scouting to find the right farm. And as we were driving, Lee looked over and said, "Milton, that's very good. We need a shot of that." And I looked over and I said, "A shot of what, Lee?" And she said, "Those cows around that thing." And I looked at her and I said, "Lee, you are the only person in America who finds it unique that there are cows in a barn." I mean, and of course, it's like she grew up in New York. It all is from her point of view. This is so unusual. Look at all of that. Oh, no, we have to get the... Yeah, so that's something that we have. That is this really interesting thing. A lot of times when I do period pieces and I start looking at the cars of the period, I do have to remind myself that that's what these people see all the time. I think it's unusual, but that is what's normal for them. The point is, there is this norm I have to get used to. You know, in other words, there is a norm that exists in this world. And when I look at it, I think to myself, God almighty, I mean, think of the work. I have to know how these people live in this world. When we were doing Down and Out in America and we were on farms in Minnesota, I used the word dirt. And the woman, Bobby Paulzine, who was the farmer, she looked at me and she said, "It's not dirt, Milton. This is the earth." And it's like, all of that is such an important thing to know.
It's like I remember reading in Stella's book where she was talking about class, and she was saying that you have to understand that the peasant's relationship to earth, dirt, is so specific and so different from what we think of as soil and earth.
Yeah.
And class plays into that as well.
Yeah.
Even in those fantastic words, dirt and earth, there's such a specific relationship. I get the depth of a relationship is what I get. The difference of the relationship between somebody who says that's dirt and somebody says that's
so good. So important.
Yeah. One is dispensable on some level and the other supports. That's where I go too.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is such a different relationship to it. It's part of you. It is part of who you are in a way that for us, it's an inconvenience. You know, it's the way some of us feel about New York. There are people who look at New York and think, "Oh, how could you live in New York?" And of course, there are those of us who think, "How could you not?" Jonathan is so jealous that we live in New York, he can't stand it.
I Don't Need an Acting Class is created and hosted by Milton Justice, produced by me, Walker Vreeland, and music is by Shagoi. I Don't Need an Acting Class is brought to you by weaudition.com, where you can sign up to be a virtual reader for auditions. You can also find a reader for a rehearsal or self-tape. It is the #1 resource for that purpose. And if you use the code ACTINGCLASS, you get 25% off, which makes it something like $10 a month. So check that out, weaudition.com. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you back here next time.